D'Angelo Russell just dropped 44 points in a win versus the Milwaukee Bucks in a game where the Lakers did not have LeBron James. And this performance, on top of really how he's played the last 2 months before this one, is really illustrative of just how much D'Angelo Russell has turned around his game, at least by comparison to the perception he had going into this season. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second. It makes a massive difference in how this video performs in the YouTube algorithm. Obviously, we're going to talk about D'Angelo Russell, and I really don't have much to say about the actual game at large. I just really want to talk about his performance and how he has been playing this season for the Lakers. And I also want to talk about these recent comments made by Rudy Gobert revolving around the NBA and refereeing and sports betting. To talk about this performance versus the Bucks, D'Angelo Russell had 44 points. He went 17 for 25 from the field and 9 for 12 from outside, going 1 for 1 from the free throw line, which is both illustrative of a criticism that you can give D'Angelo Russell, but also points out kind of why his game can be so fun when he has a night like this. Because this is not your bog standard 44-point game. Most 44-point games are not going to feature this many made shots because it's just a matter of how scoring works in today's league. Is everyone is optimizing their ability to get to the free throw line. But D'Angelo Russell, very much not that type of player. He has historically never been that type of player, which again is a problem because in terms of like differentiating yourself from other star players in the league, or standing out amongst that crowd, the reason that D'Angelo Russell has fallen out of being in that kind of territory, there's other reasons besides for this, but the largest one being his inability to get contact, his inability to really drive super well, and that has historically been his biggest downfall. When you want to be a true star player, games where you're gonna hit 9 threes, you can't rely on something like that, you know? That's not going to happen that frequently. Games where you hit a bunch of jump shots in general, you always nail the timing of your floaters, you know, that is not a guarantee. So it's nice to have those other things to fall back on, which, you know, getting to the free throw line is a major way to get easy points. But D'Angelo Russell has actually been better at the rim this year, and he is arguably having a rise almost similar to the one that he had in the past, just in dramatically different contexts. So D'Angelo Russell made an all-star team, and I believe it was the 2018-19 season with the Brooklyn Nets, where he was the best player on a Nets team that made the playoffs in spite of no one really expecting that out of him. That Nets team is actually a team that I was really fond of. I was especially fond of their head coach. I thought that he was really excellent and still don't like how he got shafted out of a job. D'Angelo Russell was really good there. His numbers are not like amazing or anything. It's like 22 points and 7 assists, and the efficiency is definitely one of the weaker all-stars when he was an all-star, but nevertheless, he was an all-star. But from there, getting traded to the Warriors, then going to the Timberwolves, now ending up on the Lakers, he's just not really been the same as he was in Brooklyn, or at least not in that tier of player. And when it came time for the Lakers to re-sign D'Angelo Russell in this previous offseason, I personally suggested that they not do it. I will sit here and say that I was very much wrong about D'Angelo Russell because I thought it would be a dumb idea for the Lakers to bring the guy back. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily sold on him being as good as he has been. You know, D'Angelo has obviously risen and fallen before, so I don't know how much I'm going to bank on the notion of what D'Angelo Russell's going to be 2 seasons from now, because who knows with him. He hasn't proven to be consistent really at any point in his career, so I'm not going to bank on it now. At the very least, he has turned around his perception as a player rather significantly in a way that you cannot ignore, regardless of how real you may believe it to be. And by real, I mean like how likely it is to maintain itself going into the future of his career. You know, it's not just a hot streak, that type of thing. He's just been so fucking good this year, undeniably, especially since the turn of the calendar year. In his last 28 games, D'Angelo Russell is averaging 22 points per game, 6.5 assists per game. He's shooting 47% from the field, 45% 45% from 3, and he is only taking 3 free throw attempts a game. That's one thing that's never changed. But as I mentioned, the rim thing, the shooting at the basket, his frequency is about the same as it's always been throughout his career, which is not super high, but at the bare minimum, it's been much better this year for him. Part of this is because he is playing off ball a lot more next to LeBron James versus like where he was in his season with the Nets. He's dramatically improved his rim percentage one way or the other. In his All-Star season, D'Angelo Russell shot 55.2% at the rim. Not good. But this season, he is currently shooting 79.4%, which is fucking excellent. Now, something that is also key, as I mentioned, the assist percentage, it is over double here. So a lot of this has been more off-ball movement from D'Angelo, backdoor cuts, things like that, just simply running the fast break. But, you know, he's played more off-ball than he did in Brooklyn, so it makes sense that he's getting easier rim opportunities. But, you know, in this game versus the Bucks, he had some drives that were pretty good, still obviously avoiding contact like all the time and still defaulting to floaters all the time. Back in the season when he was an all-star, the true shooting percentage for him was below league average. This year it is above league average, not by like a substantial margin, but it is above league average. And while his points per game is a little bit lower on the season, it's at about 18 right now, his overall efficiency on the year is so much better that I honestly feel like this version of D'Angelo Russell might be better than that Nets D'Angelo Russell. Not that that Nets D'Lo, you know, was overrated or anything because of the efficiency, but I do think that probably was asked to do too much, whereas where D'Lo is right now on the Lakers, that's probably the exact role that a guy like him needs, to be the third guy who's pretty fucking good, but not necessarily needing to rely on him too much and not needing him to have that fallback offense of free throws and getting to the rim, as I previously mentioned. I think this is the right spot. I think it's realistically the most well-applied version of D'Lo, the most adequate role for him. Yeah, as for the game at large, if I did not say this already, it was pretty much the standard D'Angelo Russell performance. You know, the mid-range from about the free throw line. He had one where he cut off ball and got a pass from AD and like floated it over Brook Lopez. Speaking of that, just a ton of floaters in general out of the pick and roll getting downhill. He got his defender on his hip a couple of times. In fact, the one free throw that he had the entire game, he got an and one on a floater where he got his defender on the hip, or it might have been a short jumper, I can't remember, but it was something like that. And then threes out of the pick and roll, couple of catch and shoots. The shots are going in more. Still not getting the easy offense, which still holds him back from like true, like real stardom. If the jump shot's gonna go in like this, the way it's been going in this year, he's no doubt a super effective offensive weapon with just how effective his three ball is, how good he is at putting the ball in the basket inside the three-point line, and how good of a playmaker he is. So yeah, shout out to D'Angelo Russell. This is a bit of a redemption. Straight up, I was like, I'd rather have my $13 million go to somebody who I can trust more than D'Angelo Russell. And look, I still haven't necessarily gained a shitload of trust for D'Angelo Russell for similar reasons, just with his past inconsistency. Definitely worth the gamble, right? Like what D'Angelo Russell could bring if he does actually bring it in the playoffs, because of course he was pretty bad in this last year's playoffs, especially in that Denver series where he ended up getting benched towards the end. You get my point. I'm going to stop rambling. D'Angelo Russell got a lot better, proved me wrong, proved a lot of people wrong. One of the bright spots that the Lakers have had this year with otherwise disappointment, but I think there's a chance that they could actually be competitive in the playoffs just because of how D'Lo has turned this around, and they've just been playing better as of late in general. But yeah, with that said, now let's talk about something a little bit more serious, which is Rudy Gobert, who made some interesting comments after last night's game versus the Timberwolves. It was the Timberwolves, right? Wait, Rudy Gobert is on the Timberwolves. It was against the Cavs. I'm such a jackass. So late in the game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, there was a play where, by the way, Rudy Gobert fouled Jared Allen, so it's ironic that he got upset about this whole thing. But there was a call that Rudy Gobert was not fond of, and he did a money sign gesture towards the ref. I believe it was specifically Tony Brothers, implying that the ref was paid off or that there was some sort of financial incentive for the foul. Also fouled Rudy out of the game, so obviously he had been dealing with foul trouble throughout the game, so he's probably frustrated with the officiating the whole way through. I'm just going to read you some of his quotes here that were to The Athletic. "My reaction, which I think is truth, is what I truly believe, even if it's the truth. It wasn't the time for me to react that way," Gobert said afterwards. "I should not have done that. I cost my team the game, and obviously they couldn't wait to give me a tech. That was bad. That was an immature reaction." Asked to clarify what he believes, Gobert said, "I made some mistakes. I airballed a dunk. Mistakes happened. Referees make mistakes too, but sometimes I think it's more than mistakes. I think everyone that's in this league knows. I think it's got to get better." Gobert said that he fully expects to be fined for his comments and for being the bad guy again that speaks what I think is the truth, but he said he felt compelled to speak his mind because I think it's hurting our game. "I know the betting and all of that is becoming bigger and bigger, but it shouldn't feel that way." He isn't directly accusing anyone of anything, but he's very much implying quite a few things, specifically in the realm of the officiating being affected by sports betting. Now, it's no secret sports betting has become way more prevalent in the NBA and sports world in general. I'm pretty sure this is across the board for the most part in sports. Weirdly enough, I don't do it that much myself, but I don't think there are a lot of sports fans who haven't touched it at least to some degree. And there is a whole lot of ethical conversations to be having about gambling. There's some people that think it needs to exist with a lot of restrictions, some people who don't think it should exist at all. But regardless of how you feel about that, one thing that I would at least hope we could all agree on is that we don't want it to affect the product itself. Regardless of how gambling affects those fans that participated in their lives, just in terms of the NBA product itself, that's what we want to be sure. In this case, at least, is obviously the other thing is a bigger deal as it relates to the league, and there's also conversations about the league pushing it, so that's another thing. What I am trying to get at, though, as I stumble over my words because this is a delicate subject and I have to qualify everything I say, we want to make sure this is not affecting the result of the game. Now, there are a lot of people who think the whole thing has been rigged in every degree ever all the time, and I think that's absolutely silly. But there has been cases of this in the NBA before, and that's when sports betting was at least not as accessible as it is now. It's not like sports betting wasn't a popular thing in the 90s when it happened in the past, but it's definitely very extremely remarkably accessible now. Take your pick. There's 100 different apps to choose from where you can sports bet. The temptation's there. It's culturally more prevalent. So the idea of refs sports betting or there being some sort of influence from officiating so that a certain threshold of stats is hit or not, I don't really know necessarily how applicable that would be on a wide scale, but even if it's just as simple as affecting one game, it's not something you want to see. Now, do I think that what Gobert experienced in this game in particular was some clear example that that's the case? No, this is more or less an accusation from Rudy Gobert. Would it surprise me? No, nothing would surprise me. People are greedy, and that wouldn't surprise me even a little bit if a ref was like, "Hey, I'm going to swing the result of a game that I put money on." If you're evil, if you have no conscience, that's a really smart thing to do. There are plenty of people like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was a sentiment that goes far beyond Rudy Gobert. I wouldn't be surprised if we got more comments. Probably not too many, because I imagine Rudy is going to get a generational fine from this one. This is a really rough thing to accuse the league of, even if it's not accusing the league organizationally and it's just the refs individually. The league is going to take that personally and it's going to take it very seriously. So I expect Rudy Gobert to catch a huge fine and maybe that'll prevent other players from saying things, but I feel like other stuff will probably be added about this. I think it's more or less opening a conversation whether or not the specific instance from this game is the best example to, you know, prove this to be a thing. But yeah, just thought I would make some comments on it because it's interesting. I guess we'll see. Sports betting definitely has, I don't think it's gonna go anywhere, so I think it's about finding a ethical and good place for it. Definitely not with officials getting in on it, that's for sure. Shout out to Nick for editing this video, but that is it. Goodbye.